In this video, we're going to be talking about astrology and why it's a complete moral hypocrite when you compare it to Christianity and its moral virtue. Okay, first off, instead of going deep, neck deep into this, I gotta explain what astrology is, because we need to have a clear definition of astrology, unlike what astrology promotes. Astrology is the study of movement and relative positions of celestial bodies interpreted as having some influence on human affairs and the natural world. I say this because astrology, despite what many astrologers or sorcerers may tell you, is complete baloney. A lot of these people end up contradicting themselves earlier on and just promote a garbage lie to tell you whatever you want to hear and promote any negative value, because if it bleeds, it sells. So if that's the attitude of astrologers and sorcerers who do not have the best of intentions at heart, then why might people, commoners, believe in this? That's because astrology has always fascinated people for centuries due to its ability to provide insight into personality traits, relationships, and life events based on celestial body movements about your life. While it definitely lacks scientific validity, many find comfort or amusement in its interpretations. Basically, the more the sorcerers and astrologers are able to butter you up, the more likely you're gonna believe it. They're making every dollar worth the buck. It can serve as a tool for introspection and self discovery. By that I mean astrology, by offering a framework for understanding oneself and others. Astrology often intertwines with cultural traditions and mythology, adding on to its allure and popularity. Basically, astrology is a trend. If it doesn't adhere to popular beliefs, it's not going to trend. If it does follow popular beliefs, it will trend. But there is something important that we have to address and understand entirely here, okay? It is that astrology's importance comes greatly dependent on individual beliefs and cultural context. Because for some, astrology serves as a source of guidance and comfort, offering insight into personality traits, relationships, and life events that they may face in the future. Sort of like a guide to life or shortcut to it all. It can provide a sense of a reassurance during uncertain times and offer a framework for understanding oneself and others. This can also be done by meditation, but who the hell wants to do that? In certain cultures, astrology plays a significant role in decision making processes such as determining auspicious times for events and or planning activities. The kings often use sorcerers and astrologers in times of conflict and unease, oftentimes as a guide to see whether or not their child will be born correctly, or which woman they should pick as their wife, what bad actions are they allowed to, who should they go to war with, etc. However, it is essential to recognize that astrology lacks scientific evidence and is considered pseudoscience by the scientific community. That is now, but it wasn't like that before. Nonetheless, we cannot ignore its cultural and psychological significance as it continues to shape beliefs, rituals, and traditions around the world, even today. But for this paper or for this presentation, I shall narrow the focus down to the Middle Ages and the religion of Christianity, specifically because they are the moral proponents and fighters against astrology ever since the 13th century, and they have been calling out their immoral practices ever since then. All right, now onto the point of the video where I'm just going to tear astrology apart from a moral point of view. We're going to rip it hand in hand, okay? So first things first, what's wrong with astrology? Astrology offsets your responsibility by blaming it on planets. Yes, planets. Astrology blames the stars and fate for your bad actions. You know what this does? This enables people to evade personal responsibility, moral obligation, and future consequences. People are blaming celestial bodies and their signs for their bad behavior. They're shrieking away from human responsibility for sin and attributing it to it rather than God. Bro, oh my god. Oh my god, I'm such an asparagus. Can you leave me alone? According to my birth chart, I should be committing warfare crimes and I shouldn't be charged for this. Okay, bye. Bye. Somehow by blaming specific elderly planets about their problems. So specific examples can include Venus for adultery and Mars for the cause of murder. And they can use Mars being in their birth chart to deny that they are humanly capable of such an act. And they would never do so if not for Mars. Basically, the planets are responsible for my bad actions. Okay, Key thing to note here is that people wouldn't behave like this if astrologers and sorcerers recklessly were promoting this astrology to the world, okay? Because what this does is that it makes a free man pay to become a slave, and it causes them to have their own spiritual debt, according to religion and Christianity and a lot of other religions, but we're just going to focus on Christianity. It damages what is possible in nature and it destroys everything in its path. This line specifically means that it ruins your creativity, your ability to plan in the future in any organization. Good behavior skills that'll help you in the future build up your free will rather than act on impulse. Okay? It's important to note astrologers are selling you a lie and they're making a profit out of you. Don't fall for their cheap tricks, even if they're selling that shit for you to free. Because though they may fool one or two people, it can have negative impacts on a societal level. Okay? A quote from a king: "If human deeds are the result of fate and people are not responsible for their behavior, then they ought not to receive praise or blame, reward or punishment for their actions under any system of morality or justice." You know what this means? Serious social consequences will become inept. Judges and courts of law will be unable to function with any sense of credibility, or it'll become a clown circus. There is not going to be anything taken seriously, and people would become indifferent concerning their work for their social obligations. So people are not going to care to be more social, and they're going to offset their responsibilities and work rather than doing it. So the Christians recognized this almost immediately. Well, not almost immediately. They accepted it, then they lost it, except nonetheless, they still fought against it. And then they defended the moral system, which adamantly is against astrology, which I'll explain later, to prevent the collapse of society as we know it. Augustine basically calls out a lot of the astrologers for not even following their own moral principles that they set out to be as astrologers. Okay? Here, let me just give you an example, okay? In the text, they give a solid example of the people they take out. People take out their frustration on other people around them, and this includes their own family members. So basically, a wife of an astrologer poses on the window rather immodestly, which sort of suggests the behavior of prostitution. That's what he thinks anyway. And then he just hits the woman. "Why did you hit me? Hit Venus, if you can. Who compels me to do such a behavior?" The astrologer, okay? You want to know what he does? He ignores the earlier advice he gave to his customers, which includes his wife, and goes ahead and inflicts his own punishment and judgment and justice to straighten out any members of his own household because he is always right. Do you see how messed up this is? These people are manipulating astrology to see or to be used as they see fit. Because if the laws were were not allowed, well, laws were basically finished, and the fate is accepted concept after death, people will choose immortality. Well, they'll be sacrificing one another for immortality, and those who are capable of doing good will not choose to go down the path of righteousness. And the fear of the law is basically gone. And so people will become more and more evil, as we see as time comes. Now, the cause of evil is blamed on fate or God rather than ourselves. When the Catholics heard this, they were like, "No, this is impossible. We cannot blame God for our mistakes. God is also responsible for creating heaven and the stars and life, which are such beautiful things for our guidance. It can't be God's will, but the astro fools that are doing and saying such an act." Because of this, the Christians believe that the demons were the original writers for astrology, for creating the text and allowing this to spread to humans, which make humans behave in demeaning ways. So, an antithesis of belief astrology of fate was freedom of will. Astrology was regarded as a demonic power that makes you lose your freedom of will, becoming subservient or a slave to fate, a slave to astrology. Augustine led the charge in a lot of this because he recognized this was bullshit. Divine judgment in the afterlife is basically Divine judgment in the afterlife is an ultimate contest against astrological fatalism. So astrological fatalism is basically the inevitability. Your fate was sealed in stone the moment you were born because of the celestial bodies. So you will act and behave and go to heaven or hell because these planets were there when you were born. The fear of being judged by God after death is what the Christians said that should compel you to behave correctly, because the importance of free will, moral agency, and personal responsibility is ultimately what shapes one's destiny and judgment. The astrological fatalism states that your fate was sealed the moment you were born, and it was all predetermined by celestial bodies, though through your birth charts. So the planets simply existing where they were conveniently when you were born will determine your fate in life. This is sending a dangerous message that you are not in control of what you do, don't bother changing it, and if astrology says you are going to heaven, irregardless of any immoral action you do, there is no point in changing your behavior. And so, what is the point of doing anything? It implies a deterministic worldview where individuals are bound by cosmic alignments at the moment of their birth. Dangerous idea to promote. Last but not least, astrology nullifies any religious worship and render prayers useless. I think the Christians almost recognize this because there were a lot of confessions on astrological texts that explicitly admitted that worship, sacrifice, and prayer were ineffective against astrological faith. Both mysteries that they didn't want to explain to anybody else. That's like a commonality between astrology and Christianity, like the religion. Even Stoicism was like fatalism is not possible to coexist with virtue. They basically stated religion did offer a variety of means to counter fatalism, such as prayer, sacrifice, and initiation rites. And they recognize, and the reason many people did this is to recognize their mortality, such as sacrificing. They made an active decision not to submit to their baser instincts, and by sacrificing something they hold dear, it is to give up comfort so that they can achieve a higher purpose. Astrology just took all of that and threw it out of the window, because if one truly believes in astrology and a predetermined fate, then engaging in religious behaviors and activity to change or influence outcomes would be futile, since this destiny is already fixed. If individuals can influence outcomes through prayer and devotion, then the deterministic principles of astrology are flawed. And the very choice to follow a particular religion or philosophy contradicts astrological faith. So the end all be all was that Christians saw that, wait, astrology was making people act bad. We cannot allow that to happen. We got to call it out because people are acting immorally. They're creating havoc. And basically it becomes a rule of where one big bully takes from the other. And we can't have that, okay? So astrology had negative consequences, but it's still a powerful proponent that many people use to sell oil snake or snake oil. Anyway, thanks for having my presentation. Goodbye.